Laundered America. Books written by Mr. J.W. Campbell. Imagine September 11th being choreographed as well as permitted by the politicians that were in office prior to, and at the time just leading up to September 11th. I am sure some of you remember the morning of September 11th like it was yesterday. I still recall my mother waking me up to the horrifying scenes unfolding on every news channel in existence at the time. Furthermore, I was late for my first day of work that unforgettable morning, so I wasn't able to watch everything unfolding. But what I do remember was Tower 1 falling in on itself, smoke and debris overtaking the streets of downtown New York. The fallout reminded me of my youth, the days of junior high school reading about the first atomic bomb being dropped on Hiroshima. My mind kept on going a mile a minute during the long bus ride into work that morning. After seeing the first tower drop and felt the energy of the world around me, I couldn't help but know in my heart without hesitation that Tower 2 was not far behind, almost like the inevitability of a domino falling right after the other in synchronicity. As I arrived at work and I was able to then watch my thoughts become reality as people gathered to watch the news updates on television. Flashes of each tower crumbling, falling debris. Reporters bringing in experts who talked in depth about how the extreme heat was engulfing hundreds of Americans, causing the remaining people to flee for safety in whatever manner they could. None of the victims could find safety. Even the ones that were on the ground became blinded, disoriented by the dust and debris as if they were in a Saharan sandstorm, except in was New York City, or at least what resembled the city of New York. Safety was a relative word. When the world as you knew it is crumbling around you with the very foundation you're standing on is burning at both ends like a cheap candle you buy as you wait in line at the dollar store. These poor people had no choice but to rely on their base human instincts for survival, but in this instinct for survival it meant to leave this earth on their own terms and not at the hands of lawless terrorism. Can you imagine for a moment all the victims staring death in its face from 55 stories in the air? Or imagine all the hundreds of people leaping the 55 stories to their death to escape the inferno each of the Twin Towers had become. To me, all the victims that day from the towers, the Pentagon and airliners are all heroes that were taken from this world in the most devastating way, with remorse being the least of the terrorists' worries. September 11th was, and is still one of America's most tragic moments in America's short and tumultuous history. The truth I am preparing for you will be hard for most to understand, especially considering how tragic and surreal the enemy's agenda has been for all Americans and what world has had to endure, all as a direct result of the unseen agenda. Pretty confusing if I say so myself, but to better understand further we must admit what happened to America really was not any one leader's fault. No, it was a collusion of many figureheads, bureaucrats with power and influence. These people of power enabled the terrorists' agenda to happen behind the scenes without any American becoming the wiser. With all of the chaos that was unfolding rapidly made it quite easy for the world not to question what was going on around them. The powers that have spent years covering up a string of offenses, a pattern that I am sure many governmental entrusted people knew the truth, but gave up in telling the truth. I am sure many people with the evidence thought it was foolhardy to try and bring the truth to the American public, do the right thing. Well, that is the type of thing only people with morals and guts would do, right? All you truth-seekers located around the world know how hard it is for some non-believers to see how corrupted this long, drawn-out agenda has been and how its effects have put a strain on the level of trust humans have, not just abroad, but here in the United States the most. Everything from heads of state, principalities, and governments have made it a mission, a duty to try and make people believe that the truth, documented truth, was nothing but a conspiracy theory. Because of all of this deception, it has taken everything from the victims' families, denying the humanity closure by allowing the continued covering up of the facts. To better set the tone of the next leg in our journey down the rabbit hole of truth, we will need to put into the perspective the governmental impact, or more to the point the whole reasoning behind 9/11 and all of the most unfortunate incidences that I will gladly lay out for you in a way that you, the truth seeker, can connect the dots as well as I have. The rabbit hole does have a bottom, so let's see how far this rabbit hole of deception does go. This broad web of deceit initiated by the clandestine powers with too many coincidences and several well-timed occurrences set to trigger, except these are the type of triggers that are planned well in advance. Since these societies are so thorough and well organized, there could be thousands of plans when executed and come out on the internet, or they are brushed under the rug as a mere coincidence. There are many instances throughout time of triggering effects that the government has used to further their never-ending agenda, so we will forego noting everything up until the bombing of the Cole and start with the example of how just in case a political party were to lose an election, much like the Bush/Gore election. This triggering, I want to point out to you, was set to promote chaos where pandemonium would most occur. Most importantly, the Democratic Party could essentially create a narrative for the Democratic Party's next elected representative to run in the following presidential election. Everyone knows that when it comes to politics, both sides of the aisle plan the front-runners almost 9 years in advance. I know this story is unfolding in a way that it might come off to you as being far-reaching, or just paranoid, trust me, I know. But what would you expect when you know the truth and you have plan on writing a non-biased book like I am right now? Trust me, this wouldn't be the first time in my life I have had people try to put me in the category of conspiracy theorist. Now to get back to the task at hand, we will segue into noting at the time the USS Cole had been attacked, Al Gore was just about to lose the presidential election for the Democrats, and they did not take losing too well. See, when a political party gets their feelings hurt, especially after Al Gore lost an election that he was a shoo-in for. Little did Americans know that chaos was not far behind, or should I say the plan was being activated. Food for thought, the election between George Bush and Al Gore was so close that the Democrats called for a recount of the overall votes. I wouldn't have put it past the Democrats to have the final tally of the recount of the election as the green light to go forward with Plan B that was most likely last planned prior to Election Day, just so there would be no paper or audio trail leading back to the architect, the agenda creator. After the Vice President Gore lost the election, it was a hard hit to the Democratic Party's ego. Here is the part where speculation blurs into reality. Not many people will recall that not long after the inauguration of President Bush, the first tower fell in New York. I know it's hard to really believe that a political party would cause September 11th and all to create a smokescreen and do their worst, with the plan to shift the focus onto the president-elect. The Democratic Party wanted Americans to believe it was the newly elected president's fault for what so tragically happened on that unforgettable day in early September.